Today's video is brought to you by Glass Spider Publishing. Offering a wide range of hybrid book publishing services, Glass Spider Publishing is your one-stop shop for professional editing, design, publication, and book marketing services. Visit glassspiderpublishing.com today to learn more. Welcome back. Today's painting, I'm going to be using a 12 by 16 inch black canvas. Size, shape, type of canvas does not matter. If you don't have a black canvas, you can paint it black with black paint or black gesso. If you don't want to paint it black for whatever reason, I would at least recommend that you give it an underpainting of some kind. Ultramarine blue would be a really good underpainting for this. Because we want the sky to be nice and moody and dark as well as the water, I just think you're going to have a much easier time getting those dark values if you start on a dark surface, but that's completely up to you. And I have a white chalk pencil. I had a white chalk pencil. You can use whatever you like to draw on canvases with. What I'm going to start doing is just kind of finding the elements of my little beach scene. And I'm going to start with the horizon. I want to make sure that I don't get it in the center, and I feel like my center is right about roughly there. So I'm going to put it just above center. Maybe right here. And I'm just going to loosely, that's probably crooked, but it doesn't matter right now. Right about there. I want some distant trees, probably no taller than right about there. These are going to be very abstract and kind of misty, fading into the background. So I'm not going to start drawing like individual trees or anything. That's just generally where my trees are going to live. And let's find our water, which in turn finds our beach. We've got our horizon here, so I'm going to leave that. We'll come off of the horizon and kind of start moving down a bit. Maybe let it go off the edge here. Follow that with our eye. Actually, let's figure out where we want it to end over here. We want to give our campfire enough place to reside, so we'll put a mark there. That's where the beach is going to end, and we'll connect those lines. I think that's pretty good. Now our campfire, let's decide about our flame. I don't want the flame to overlap into here. So maybe just below maybe right about there. That's about in the center, so I might move it as we go, but let's see. The base of it is probably going to sit right around here somewhere. It's going to be kind of a triangle shape. Just the overall shape is kind of triangular. So something like that. Now we can get started painting. I'm going to use my number 8 Filbert. It's just a good stiff brush. If you have my cloud brushes, you could use those. And I'm going to be using Payne's Gray, Ultramarine Blue, and White. Now, if you're using Payne's Gray by Golden, you can probably get away without using Ultramarine Blue because that one is very, very blue. I am not using the Golden, so I'm going to add some Ultramarine. So I'm going to load up with some Payne's, some Ultramarine. This is going to give us a beautiful smoky gray blue color. And let's get a little bit of white. Really pretty stormy color. Let's get some medium. And we'll just kind of start laying it in. I like to give it kind of a sweeping look. So my overall brush movement is going to be this way, but it doesn't mean that every brush stroke is going to be like that. That's going to look very stiff. So I'm going to kind of scrub it on in different ways, but then smooth it out in a bit of a sweeping motion. Let's lighten that just a little bit more. Now, don't avoid your trees. You want to go down into here because that's going to help us get the look that the trees are kind of misty and getting fogged out. All the way to our horizon, and at the horizon I'm going to go a little bit more horizontal. It's very distant, so you don't see as much detail back there, including the way the clouds are moving, the direction. So we'll keep kind of swoopy up here, a little more flat right there. Get down in those trees. Don't outline them. You'll regret it, I promise, when you've got a hard line that you can't get rid of later. Let's lighten it a little bit more and work on building up some light in our clouds. Keep your brushwork kind of loose and expressive. It's okay if it's a little on the abstractish side. A little bit lighter. And as we go lighter, we're applying less and less of it. I'm going to keep the lighter color close to where the trees are going to be. I'm going to lighten up the horizon a little bit more too, I think. I don't think I actually like that. I think I do want to keep the horizon a little on the darker side. Just wipe off the bulk of that and darken it back up. The reason I feel like I want the horizon a little bit darker is because it's going to help give it that stormy look. And it's going to help lead into the water below, which is going to be nice and dark in the distance. We'll come back and darken it up again. But I just wanted to get rid of that light. Nice and light. Just picked up a little medium. One last bit, and then I'm going to let it dry. I'll probably come back and lighten some things up. Maybe even darken some things up later. But for now, I feel like that's thick enough wet paint that it's going to start getting hard to work in if I keep going. All right, let's fill in the water since we're going to be using the same colors. I cleaned off my brush because I had a lot of white on it, and I want to start back here where it's going to be the darkest. So we'll get some Payne's and some ultramarine. There might be the tiniest bit of the white in there, and that's okay. A little medium. Start way back here and let there be a pretty distinct difference between the horizon and the sky, but ever so slightly softer. You don't want a hard, crisp line. So I'm just going to kind of touch right on that line to just blur it just a little bit. All right, now as we move forward, we can start to allow a little bit of that white to get in there. It's gonna slowly start getting lighter as we work forward. I'm not really worried about any of my lines. It's okay if the ratio of colors is a little different each time. Maybe I'll pull a little extra blue into the water. Pretty much horizontal toward the front. Some of them might curve a little bit, some of my brush marks, but for the most part, we're going to go fairly horizontal. Let's really start to lighten that up. That might be a little light, but that's okay. I'm going to slowly work up into that previous color. And then back down. Smooth out any hard lines. And I think I'm going to darken it up over here. We're going to have a little bit of the reflection of the trees to that side. Definitely overlap your beach. There is not a hard, crisp line where the beach and the ocean meet. They kind of fade together a little bit, so keep a soft line, but go farther down than where you actually want your beach and your water to meet. I think I've decided that I want my sky a little more foggy, misty, a little less choppy. So it's dried a bit since I was working up here, but it's still a little wet, so that'll work. Even if it's dry, it's not gonna be hard to do. So I'm gonna mix up just one of the colors that I used in that sky. It doesn't really matter. I'm just gonna kind of start softening it a bit. Remembering that there's some white in there already, so it's gonna lighten whatever I put on there. Kind of lightly scumble it on. Very cloudy looking. I like that better already. If you're doing this and it's too wet, it's kind of like lifting and leaving scratch marks, just dry your canvas. Wait until it's completely dry before you come back and start doing this. Using the side of my brush, not the flat. See how I've kind of got it distorted? It's from pressing into the side of the brush. This is all just wet, so I'm just nudging it around, not really adding any more paint. Sometimes changing your mind halfway through a section is scary. But sometimes it helps you get the exact look you were going for that you couldn't have achieved had you just gone for that look in the first place. Smoothing out some of the brush strokes. I will definitely be adding more to that, but I'm going to let it dry a bit. Much better. I like that so much better. Just get a little bit of a lighter color here. It will really set off the darkness in the horizon. All right, this is all dry. Let's go ahead and start getting some of our distant trees in there. I'm gonna go to my 5/8 inch angle, and I'm just gonna pick up Payne's Gray, not a ton of it, just some, and mix it with some medium. I want very transparent. Can you see about how transparent that is there? So I'm gonna use the tip of the brush. I'm just gonna kind of find some abstract shapes. I'll probably wipe some out with my hands, but no hard lines. Don't try to make like actual tree shapes. We're just looking for some transparent whooshes or I don't know, some kind of shapes in there. Very soft and subtle. No hard edge brush marks, just kind of softening some of those. That's pretty transparent, but I'm going to add a few layers of this. So I'd rather have my first layer be too transparent than too stark, too dark, too hard lined, all of that. Too transparent is good. I think that's an okay start. I think I'm gonna go just a little bit more Payne's, maybe not quite as much medium, not as transparent. Just kind of start getting rid of the lines in here, because since Payne's is pretty transparent, it's probably gonna take a couple of layers to get rid of that. So I'll just start working on that now. Kind of like in the Misty River video that I did, the way that I did the trees in that one is very similar to the way that I'm doing this here. And I know I didn't give any real instruction in that video. Actually didn't give any instruction at all in that video. So if the trees were something that you struggled with in that one, it's basically exactly what I'm doing here. In fact, this whole area was kind of inspired by that. I really enjoyed painting those trees. And so I wanted to do that again, kind of that same type of technique. And definitely my sky is not as light as I want it. But Also, just like in that Misty River video, I had to build up to the final brightness that I wanted. So that's what we're going to do here as well. I think that's a good place to stop on the trees. All right, while we wait for the trees to dry, let's get our beach in. And for the sand color, I'm going to use a mixture of burnt sienna, got yellow ochre or yellow oxide. They're pretty much the same thing. So I'm going to start with those and white, and I might have to alter them a little bit with my paints or ultramarine, but we'll see. I'm going to stick with my angle brush for now. So let's start mixing up a bit of a sandy color. I've got my burnt sienna, my yellow ochre, just kind of find a nice balance between the two. That's pretty good. I think it's going to be a little bright. Let's see, some white. Definitely needs more yellow. And I think it's a little aggressively peach for my taste. I'm going to grab some of this messy transparent Payne's gray here and mix it in. Ooh, that's better. Just kind of toned things down just a little bit. That's a better color. Even if it's not the perfect color right now, I think that's a good color to start with. So let's start laying it into our beach. So up here, I want to kind of make it look like it's slanting down. So I'm not just going to like fill it in a little, triangle. I'm going to kind of start from where my trees are going to end, kind of swoop down to the water a bit. Remember that your brush stroke direction can help you kind of dictate how land or other elements are moving. Over here where it's kind of fading away, it's getting farther from us. We'll go horizontal. I think I'm slanting up a little bit, but I'm trying to paint at an angle, so sometimes that's hard. I think that's not too bad. The other elements around it aren't finished, so I can make adjustments to it. But I think that's an okay start. Let's start filling in at the bottom. I do like I said before, a bit of a vignette, so I think I'm going to leave the corners a bit darker. Definitely overlap your water a little bit. Ignore the campfire, at least for the most part, because you don't know exactly what it's going to cover just yet. And if you try and paint around that, you're going to have weird gaps where you feel like you have to force the campfire to exist. A little medium, because that will help me blur those two together much better. All right, mix up a little more. It's okay if the color's a bit different. We'll go a little darker. Just kind of let that fade out there. Let's kind of scumble that out. All right, let's go back into the sky, and I'm going to go back to my number 8 Filbert, my long handle, stiff bristle one. And let's mix up a bit of a lighter color for our sky here. So a bit of Payne's, a bit of ultramarine, some white, trying to avoid getting any of that brown in there. All right, let's see how that plays out. A little bit of medium. Kind of plop the paint down and then a light touch to dust it out. Not avoiding those trees at all. I'm not applying the thick paint over top of them, but I'm not trying to cut around them either. Let's get just a little more medium and we can kind of glaze over them a bit. Just make sure that's nice and transparent. I'm going to go a bit lighter. One more little spot, I think, about right in here. I might come back toward the end and just give one more little punch of brightness, but for now I'm going to call that pretty good. But as you may have noticed, I left that corner blank, so I cleaned off my brush. I want it to be kind of a little bit of a stormy spot, you know, where the clouds are really thick. So a little bit of my dark color with some medium. And just lightly scumble that super thin, transparent dark color in a bit. Just create some shadows. Really light touch there. And see, sometimes taking something darker helps your lights seem brighter. So I've talked about it before, but I get asked all the time, how do you make white seem brighter? And that may sound like a silly question, but I know exactly what people mean when they ask that. They say, my white isn't bright enough. If your white isn't bright enough, that means there's not enough contrast in your painting. Your dark areas aren't dark enough. So if you are about as light as you want to or can go and it doesn't seem bright enough, darken something else. Another way to make your white or light areas seem brighter without necessarily going brighter is by changing the temperature, which I'm not going to do in this painting, but basically what that means is, let's say I didn't want to go any brighter than this, but I wanted it to appear brighter, seem closer to white, or like light is really being reflected there. I could change the temperature. So right now, because I've used Payne's Gray and Ultramarine, which are both very blue, this is a very cool gray here, almost blue. If I were to use a color that had a little bit more yellow to it, so not necessarily lighter, just a little bit more yellow, it would seem very glowy there. It would seem like a light is reflecting on it or emanating from it, and all without going any lighter. So those are just a couple little tips for you, unrelated to our painting today, but hopefully helpful in some way. Let's work on our trees one more time. Back to my 5/8 inch angle. Really just Payne's Gray. I might be picking up a tiny bit of blue. It doesn't matter. Pretty solid here. Just a bit of medium, because I don't want it perfectly opaque, but I don't want it as transparent as I used it before. So we'll start down here and work our way up. It doesn't have to mimic those shapes that we already did. It doesn't have to fall in line with those shapes. You can have just a little bit more structure and edge to these trees than the ones in the background, which are very, very fuzzy. These don't need to be quite as fuzzy. Barely touching, just kind of using the flat side of the brush and kind of nudging. Little bits of paint stick here and there, and in other places they don't get any paint. That's pretty good. I'm going to go into my solid paints. I did not pick up any medium. Really fill in the bottom here. All the way down to the beach. And then I'm going to pull it down until it meets it. It's okay if they overlap a bit. Especially since the beach is not done. So let's just go ahead and make sure those overlap a bit so there's not too hard of a line between them. I think while we have some wet paint here on the beach. Let's take advantage of that. I'm gonna go to my short handle, soft number 8 Filbert, and let's just start with our beach color here that is drying out on my palette. Some white. And I really want to gray it down because we're going to say that it's a bit of a shadow there, a little shadowy, being cast by those trees. Ooh, I like that right there. I'm going to use that color right there. Just kind of dash it on there. It's grabbing some of that panes and pulling it in. I'm trying to stagger the shape so it's not perfectly straight. That just makes it look a little more natural. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Let's go just a little bit brighter, just in a few places, a few little highlights. Kind of pulling them in that downward direction, sloping toward the water. Point of medium. Clean brush, just paints and medium. We're just going to nudge, make sure there's not just anything that looks unnatural where they meet. And we can even add just some little extra shapes here where it terminates. I will probably go through and add just a few extra, like, real tree shapes up in our trees in a little bit. But I think we'll let that dry first. Just some medium. Just going to cast a bit of an extra shadow here. think I'm gonna stick with this little filbert and let's start working on the water. So like our little ripples and waves, and if there's something about the way that your beach meets the water, we can take care of it here. So I'm really just gonna pick up some white. I might dirty it up with just a hint of my blue-gray. Just a little bit. I want it to read as white, but sometimes if you go straight white, it's too aggressive. So that might just look like white to you, but I can see the bit of blue-gray in there. All right, I'm gonna use the side of my brush, the edge, and just kind of start marking in some little crashy things, starting in the distance, barely touching. And along the beach a bit. I don't want to outline everything, so not everything's gonna get it, but I don't really love that. And I think I'm gonna mark out where my big wave is gonna be. And I'm gonna do that with a pencil because I don't want to just go at it straight with the paint and then decide against it. So we'll kind of say our big wave is gonna come around. We'll say kind of like that. And it's not going to be a crashing wave, just a low rolling wave. But you can do a big crashing wave if that's what you want. I just want this to feel very peaceful, very calming. All right, so the front of the wave. Letting it move just a little bit. I think I like that shape. And we'll meet up there with that guy that I didn't like. The back of the wave, just kind of let it be a little fuzzy right now. We'll take care of that separate. Just picking up some medium. I actually picked up a lot of medium there. And I'm gonna kind of blur out as much as I can. We're gonna come back to it, but you know me and hard lines. No hard lines until we really want them. They just are hard to cover up later. Some little detail-y waves. Maybe there's another guy back in here. Just giving myself some options here. We can get rid of any of these that we don't like later. Let's get some medium, kind of make a little bit of a splashy break here. Just lighten it up a bit. I might get rid of that. I think I want to pull just a bit more down this way. Just kind of play an experiment right here. This can all be gotten rid of, so don't feel stuck. I think that's a pretty good start. Let's just keep this paint on our brush. I'm going to get a bit more blue, a bit more panes. Let's darken it a bit. A little more shadowy than it was. And some medium. And let's work on the back of the wave here. I'm going to start in it and blur toward the back a bit. A little point of medium. And again, break that up. I'm even going to make it just a little grayer. It's pretty blue. And just streak some of that out into the darker areas. Don't worry if you get rid of too much of your dark, because you can add it back in. I'm really just picking up medium at this point, and it's taking the paint that's on my brush with it. This is kind of a weird area right in here. We'll figure it out though. Let's keep that color with some medium. Let's get it pretty transparent. There's a lot of white in my brush, so just mixing it up a little darker. Pretty transparent, and we'll just kind of give some other little reflection-y bits throughout with this thin color that's just a bit darker. Most of my brush marks are going horizontal. They're moving horizontal, but sometimes they're a little zigzaggy, but still horizontal. So I might start this direction and then zig this way and back this way. It's not all just a series of horizontal lines. Even this is kind of a similar shape. You could say that it started over here, kind of zigged this way, back that way. It's just kind of some zigzags. So think in terms of zigzags, not just horizontal lines. A little medium, I got a hard line there that I can't get rid of. Right here where we meet the sand. That's what I'm going to do. Kind of get this color dusted over it. That's kind of what I started there, and it looked garbage, so I abandoned it. Medium. Next in the water, we're going to start working in the shadows and kind of take care of where these lighter colors are blending into the dark. But I want to make sure that all of that is dry beforehand. So let's work on our lower half of the beach. All right, I think we're making some good progress. The water still looks a little strange in a few places, but it is not done. But I feel like before I move on with the water too much more, I want to work on the beach because I'm gonna need it to come in just a little bit more, just so they look a little more natural to each other and here as well. So I'm gonna work on the beach a little bit, and then we'll see what's going on with the water at that point. All right, we'll zoom in there a little bit so you can see what I'm doing a bit easier. And I'm gonna mix up just a similar beach color to what we originally did. So a little burnt sienna, a little yellow ochre, tiny, tiny point of Payne's gray. And some white. Pretty good. I'm gonna go nice and transparent here. Pretty transparent with the medium. And I wanna blend it in with the water just a little bit. The color's not quite right. There we go. That's gonna be better. Much better. Okay, just kind of blurring it in here a little bit. That's a little better. Let's grab just a bit more paint that's not quite as transparent. And I'm just gonna vary up the color a little bit. So that's gonna make the beach seem a bit more dynamic, like there's hills and valleys and wet sand and dry sand and shadows and light. You can change the temperature too. Add a few places that are a little bit cooler, a little bit warmer. That's looking much, much better. All right, let's work on the bottom part of the beach, and I'm gonna keep that same mixture on my brush. Maybe I'll brighten it ever so slightly with some yellow. I don't want to make it yellow, I'm just kind of changing the temperature a little bit. Let's see how that does. Just a little bit of medium. It's not terribly transparent. And I'm going to pull this up into the water just a little bit more. Super light touch helps blend it. Barely, barely touching. I have a lot of paint on this brush, but you can see not a lot is coming off. It's the way that I'm applying the paint. So I've got my hand on my canvas and I move the brush so it's just touching, and with my hand on the canvas, I can't really accidentally push harder on the brush. So if you find you're a little heavy-handed and you have a hard time doing really light movements like that, try that. Put your hand on the canvas and it will hold your brush at a constant distance. Also, if your paint is too wet on your brush, that can really make it hard to get just a little bit of paint. See how much is on there. I did not get more paint, I just pushed a little harder. Back here, I am gonna kind of smooth it a bit more. As we work down toward us, we'll make the ground a little choppier. Again, I've got my hand on the canvas. You can hear that sound? That's my fingernails, not the brush. Not terribly worried right here. The fire is going to be there. But I'm moving in just a little bit, just in case some of it shows. Actually, I feel like I need to pull the edge of the ground up a little bit over here. I just feel like it's too flat looking. So I'm gonna mix up a little bit more and just start pulling that up. I'm gonna pull it up quite a bit. There we go. That's gonna be a better line. Just picked up some medium. Not really raising this side over here, just connecting to it a bit better. I just don't want it to be like a scoop shape. I think maybe I'll move to my angle brush. This one is just a little small for this area. All right, got my 5/8 inch angle loaded up. Like I said, I'm going to keep it a little smoother back here, and we'll kind of chop it up as we get down here, because there would be footsteps and, you know, whatever else, and it's closer to us, so we'll see a little bit more detail there. Start going a little less horizontal here in the middle area. And I'm going to start adding just a little bit more panes to it. Get a bit more shadowy as we come forward. Be careful when you're mixing up this ground color. If you go too heavy on the yellow while you're adding panes, you're going to get kind of green. If you want to avoid it turning too green, just go a little heavier on the side of the burnt sienna. Just add a little more panes there. little bit darker of a mixture. Just gonna pick up pains. I've still got all those other colors on my brush. I just picked up pains in some medium and fill these corners in and feather it into everything else a bit. I kind of like the idea that maybe we're in a shaded area. So I know the campfire realistically would be throwing light all around here, but I'm not trying to create something that's ultra realistic. I'm trying to create a mood, a feeling, a place that I would like to be, and what that place might look like. And sometimes to create a mood, you have to change things that would actually be into things that you just kind of want to see. So I like the idea, like I said, that maybe we're kind of under the shade of a big tree that you can't see, or a cliff face, or whatever. If you want to go a little bit more realistic, I mean, I think this painting is not ultra realistic anyway, so I don't see the need to really worry about it. But if you wanted to go a little more realistic, you could put some of those warm fire colors into the sand around you. I just feel like that's going to change the mood and make it seem a little bit too, I don't know, chipper. You know, the more light you have in a painting, the more like upbeat and chipper it feels. And I'm not trying to make a painting that's down and depressing, but I want cozy and moody because it's the kind of atmosphere and landscape that I like. Just a light touch with the tip of that angle brush. Just gonna mix up a little bit of a lighter color, just work on a few details and differences. So just kind of play around with different versions of your beach color and, you know, make it look nice and dynamic and just different. I think to have it just be one flat color is going to make it very, very flat, very phony. Play with different textures as well. Just some medium, smooth out textures I don't want. once our fire's in, I'm gonna touch up the sand around it anyway. I actually think I'm gonna grab my number 8 for a minute, my large stiff number 8, get some water, drop it here, you know what's coming. Get some panes, mix it into that water I dropped. Maybe a little bit of my burnt sienna. Just a nice rocky color. You want to make sure that that paint just about flows. That's not quite enough. If it's not moving more than that, then it's going to give you splatters rather than droplets. So I just got a little extra water. Mix it in there. Let's see. That's it's better, but let's just do a little bit more water. That should be good. So I'm gonna load up with that and just get a little bit of a beach texture. A slow flick is gonna give you just a very few tiny flicks, and a fast one is gonna give you a lot of texture and splatters. I like to just kind of touch and break some of those up a bit. Get rid of that paint on my finger, don't waste it. Little flicks for up at the top. Nice and soft and slow, and then fast and aggressive for some larger ones. I think flicks make everything a little bit better. Just getting rid of that paint on my finger. That's looking pretty good. I like that. All right, let's fix up our water a little bit. Get that going. I'm gonna go back to my small number 8 Filbert, and let's mix up some of our watercolor. So I am gonna take a little bit of blue, a tiny bit of panes, and let's mix it in with some white. We're looking for almost pure white. Almost pure white. There we go. That's pretty good. A little bit of medium. And I want to change the front of this wave a bit. I think we have too much movement over on this side. It's going to end up coming off the edge there. A little medium, blur that back. I think I like that better. Let's get a bit of this color back here and on the front here. I didn't go over this spot here because I want to kind of make it feel like the wave is breaking a bit there. Much better. A little medium. Just going to glaze this down just a bit. That water is just a little too dark for me. I'll make it look like maybe there's some waves that have already broken there. I think that looks better. Let's get some shadows under our waves. So we'll just darken this color. Make sure it's darker than the watercolor that's already there, and I don't think it is. Nope. Let's try that. So underneath the edge of our wave, that's still not much darker. There we go. It's right up under the edge of the wave. Maybe not so much in there because that one I feel like is already kind of broken. If you can't get this color dark enough to be darker than what you have here, just lighten what you have here. Best way to remember how to do these dark lines, where to put them, is just make sure that they're underneath a lighter line. That will make that lighter line feel like it's kind of raising up a bit. And I think I'm going to put a little extra medium in here and kind of glaze back here. This color is about the same color as the water back here. So I'm going to kind of glaze it forward, very transparent. That way I don't lose all of the color that I put back here. Just kind of blend it in a little bit. Maybe even just over top of that a little bit. It's a bit bright back there, I feel like. I don't need the ones in the distance to be quite so bright. Really get some medium in here, nice and transparent. Let's even just get a hint of it in here, just a little bit. Makes it feel foamy. I know that that's a lot right there, but I can add more white on top of it and really assimilate the colors together. That actually looks pretty dang good. A little bit of that. Same type of thing here where it's kind of spotty. I'm not glazing into the whole thing, just creating some texture. Pretty good. I feel like we're getting close to being done with the water. I cleaned off my brush. I'm just gonna get some white. No medium, no other color, just white. And we're gonna really pump up the highlight on the edge of our waves here. If you can tell, the color's a lot thicker than the paint that I was using before, where I was using much thinner paint. This is a lot thicker. I'm keeping the bright white special just for the top edge of some of these waves. They're hardly even waves, just little breaks. You can even just pull a couple of them out. Remember those little zigzag patterns I was telling you about? Maybe just a few of those here and there to indicate where the water has already kind of crashed down and the way it's moving. Kind of flick that one up, maybe just a little bit. You know, I'm not going to worry about that. The fire may cover that, so we'll just leave it. Let's just keep going. You can do some of those little zigzags off the back as well. Pull it over that line, and that will really make it feel like it's breaking. take this as far as you want. You can put as much detail into this water as you want to. I'm going to mix a little medium into that. Just make it a tiny bit transparent. And just work on a few of these little zigzags on the beach. Right up to the sand. And even over onto the sand a bit. Yeah, I want to keep doing that. So remember, all this is just pure white with medium. Very transparent. That's all I'm using. Almost done. I see one more place I want to put some, and then I think we're gonna do one other thing to the water, and I believe we'll be done with it. All right, our last thing we're gonna do, I'm gonna take my brush. It is not clean. Picked up some water. You know where we're going with this. Just white. Mix it in that water until it just starts to run. Let's see. Yep, there we go, that's good. Right up to just where we feel like it's breaking, and we're gonna flick. Kind of point the brush upward, and that'll send some of that up a bit. My brush is so close to the canvas, I'm maybe a half an inch from the canvas. We don't want to do the big splashes across everything, just in a few places. A little spray back here. Just a little bit of paint on my finger. Just wipe it off onto a couple places. All right, I'm gonna let this dry completely because we're gonna do our fire next. We're gonna add in the logs and the fire, and I wanna be able to sketch it with my pencil first. I don't wanna just charge in with some paint. But if I use my pencil on paint that's even a little bit wet, then it's going to be really hard to get off later. So you want this to be completely dry. All right, my canvas is dry now. You can tell there's not a pop sound when I touch it. So we can go ahead and draw our campfire or bonfire or whatever with our chalk pencil on here, and then the pencil will easily wash off. All right, so we don't need to draw in all of the details. I'm just going to give myself some general guidelines. And again, it's just so I'm not coming to the canvas with paint without having fully thought this out. So the bottom of my campfire, I think, is going to be roughly in this area. And I want it to be fairly large. Be about like that. So I go from here, it's about 1.5 inches from the edge of the canvas, to here, it's about 2 inches from the edge of the canvas, just slightly offset a little bit. And we'll have kind of the rocks and sticks kind of in this area. Maybe I'll bring the bottom down just a little bit more, because I don't really want the rocks and sticks to overlap into the water too much anyway. It's right about there. I'm just gonna kind of remind myself that that line is not necessary. And then I'll have the fire kind of come up roughly into that area. So we'll have like some rocks. We'll have some little bits of wood that are moving into the fire. Some that are kind of standing up at different angles. I think that'll be pretty good. I like that shape. So I'm going to start by getting some Payne's Gray. You could use Mars Black if you really want to. And I'm just going to start painting in some of the rocks and sticks. All right, so I'm going to use my number 8 Filbert. It doesn't really matter, whatever brush you're comfortable with. And get some Payne's Gray. And let's just find a couple of our sticks first, because they're going to be the primary thing. All the little rocks around it we can kind of fill in later. So just kind of making some marks that are generally where I want them. Remember that as long as you're using professional grade paint anyway, your cadmiums that we're going to use for the fire will pretty much cover anything that you don't like. And like I've told you before, you don't have to run out and buy all professional grade paint. But if you're interested in starting to move into professional grade paint, I recommend that you immediately upgrade your cadmiums and your white, titanium white. The rest of them, I don't really have any other colors that I feel like are imperative to have in a professional quality paint. You know, if cost is an issue for you, I think those are the only ones that I really recommend you immediately upgrade. Everything else you can kind of do as you're ready to. But I think you'll see a huge quality difference immediately upon upgrading those paints. So I'm kind of just adding like some little rocky shapes at the bottom. And some sticks kind of pointing off at a bit of different angles here and there. We can just kind of fill this in at the very base, almost randomly. We can add more and change the shape of those later, but I think that's a good start. Let's start getting our fire in there. But first I'm going to hit that with my blow dryer because I don't want to pull that Payne's Gray into the bright warm colors. All right, I've got my fire colors here, and I've got Cad Orange, Cad Red Medium. You could also use Cad Red Light, but I don't recommend using deep. I've got Cad Yellow Light. You could use any Cad Yellow you like. And then I've got some medium. And for the fire, I decided I'm going to use my angle brush. Use whatever you're comfortable with. I like the angle brush because if I press hard, I can get wide brush strokes. But if I don't press hard, if I use a light touch, I can get very sharp, small lines. So that's why I decided on this brush. I'm going to start with a mixture, I think, of the orange and the red. So mostly orange. I'm just going to flavor it with a little bit of red just to really warm it up. I think that's pretty good. A little bit of medium. And I'm going to start just by kind of filling in down here. We'll worry about the top in a little bit. It's okay if I overlap the black a little bit. I don't want to just paint over all of it though, because that kind of takes away some of the shape. And I worked not really hard, but I worked for those shapes. So I don't want to just get rid of them all at once. But I can definitely paint out anything that I feel like isn't working. All right, and as we move up, I'm going to get just a little bit more deliberate with the shapes that I'm creating. Just kind of pulling that up just a little bit, very thinly right now, so that I can play with the shapes as we go. It is almost like painting trees. It's a very similar type technique. Maybe just a little bit more specific with the end shapes up here. That's not too bad for a start. Let's just deepen some of that a little bit, make it a little bit more opaque, primarily toward the center. It's okay if it's a little transparent toward the edges. Let's keep going with that. I'm going to grab a little bit more red, some medium, but I'm going to be pretty choosy with where this red goes. I don't want a lot of it, but a little bit. All right, I cleaned off my brush. I'm going to get a little bit of orange and mix some yellow into it. A nice, bright, warm yellow there. This is going to go in the center of our fire shape. kind of sweeping it upward a little bit. And that paint's getting pretty thick, so I think I'm going to let it dry a bit before I try and do too much more, she says as she continues painting. Yeah, let's let that dry for a little bit. Let's work on the ground a bit, because right now it kind of looks like our fire pit's floating on the beach, and we don't want that. So I'm going to go back to my angle, use whatever you're comfortable with. Let me get just a little bit of my paints, maybe a little bit of burnt sienna. We'll get like a dark sand color. So just paints and burnt sienna, a little bit of medium. I'm going to kind of blend this in. So heavier at the base of the fire pit, and then just kind of fade it out into the sand. And that's taking away our chalk lines on the ground as well, so that works. And then just a little bit of texture through there. Just some medium. Just kind of this area on the other side, just a little bit, so it's not suddenly light on one side of the fire pit and dramatically darker on the other side. Going back to my little Filbert, I'm going to mix up a bit of a sand color with our yellow ochre and our burnt sienna, our Payne's gray, a little bit of white. Just something kind of warm and lighter than what we've got going on in the foreground there. And we'll just give some little points of light. We don't want it to be just all dark over here. Just mostly texture in this color. It's blending with that dark color a little bit, and I think that that's okay. Let's even go just a tiny bit lighter. Maybe just a little bit warmer. We'll throw a little bit more yellow in there. If you wanted to splatter it like we did the darker texture, you could do that too. I thought about it, but I like the difference in textures there between the splatter and the brushwork, so. Maybe let's go just one lighter. We'll just do a little bit, some lightning texture in the lighter areas. Let's just see how that looks. I might not like it. Yeah, that's all right. And if your fire got away from you on the beach, you can kind of cover up some of those little bits. I'm pretty happy with where my fire extends right now, but if you're not, you can cover it up here. All right, let's reshape, fill in, and highlight some of our rocks and sticks. So sticking with my little Filbert, I'm gonna get some panes. Let's mix some burnt sienna in there. Nice and dark, but obviously warm. Just a point of medium, mostly just for texture, not because I'm trying to make this transparent. I'm going to save this color for the sticks. So, just kind of reshape that, give it kind of a rough looking broken or split end. It's okay if your fire is still wet at this point. If that fire is still wet and you're picking up some of that color into this wood, I think that that's okay. That's just going to add some highlights. You don't need to paint everything with this color, especially the farther it gets from the fire. I think you can leave it darker. I'm gonna pretty much keep the highlights close to the fire. So I'm just pulling a little more burnt sienna into there. Maybe we'll pull just a little bit of yellow in, yellow ochre. Maybe even just a hint of our cad red. Just for some of, yeah, I like that. And I might be getting carried away with some of this color on the wood, but that's okay, because I can knock it back with some more panes. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. All right, clean brush, just getting some panes. No medium, no mixing anything in with it. And we can dash over anything that got to be too colorful or whatever. And just like we were saying before earlier about, you know, if your white isn't bright enough, then it's because your other colors around it aren't dark enough. darkening some of this is going to make that red that I put on the wood seem to glow a bit more. Just make it seem a little bit brighter, simply by darkening what's around it. Let's highlight some of those rocks. So I've still got my panes on my brush. Throw that down there. A little bit of white. I might add just a little bit of burnt sienna, just so the color isn't so cool. All right. And we're just going to lightly highlight some of those rock shapes. If you wanted to add some of your warm color on top of them to kind of indicate a little bit of a reflection from the fire, that's okay. You can do that. I might. We'll see. I'm just going to get this on there first, and then I'll decide. Yeah, let's go a little bit lighter on that. And I think maybe I will throw in just a little bit of my yellow ochre. So it's a bit of a warm, just a little bit of a warmer highlight. But I primarily think I'll keep that color toward the innermost rocks. Maybe one more lighter. One more warmer. And let's see how that is. Clean brush, little panes, little medium, make it a bit transparent. And I'm just going to glaze out kind of the shadow sides of some of these. And anything I felt like got a little too bright, just dust it over top of it. maybe some of these lighter shapes that I put in here. Just adding a bit of this thinned down panes underneath some of those little, lighter colors. Just helps it seem like a three-dimensional texture rather than just a visual flat texture. Let's just hit. So I got dirty with the panes, just picked up a tiny, tiny bit of my red, a tiny bit of medium, and just a little bit more highlight on some of the wood that's right in the fire. We are just about done, guys. I'm going to stick with my Filbert. We're just going to kind of build some texture and color in our fire, and then I think we're done. So let's start again with kind of that warm orange, a little bit of the red in it. I don't think I'm going to pick up any medium this time. Just a heavier application of the orange. And we'll just fill in a little bit of these shapes here and there. Not all of it. Let some of it be a bit transparent. Even over top of the logs a bit here and there. Let's warm it up a bit more with some more red. That's pretty conservative with this color. Just some. Let's get it nice and deep in here. Don't forget to paint your fire down in here. Vary up your brushwork. Try and find different ways of flicking the brush and different parts of the brush to use to get different shapes and textures and all of that. Just want to thicken this up here a little bit. I think we're going to move on to the lighter interior colors. We've already got some of that going, but let's get a little bit more. So I'm going to get some more orange, mix it in with my yellow, nice and bright, mostly yellow. Maybe let's add a little bit of white. A little bit softer brushwork in here. Let's get some more white. I just dunked straight into it. white really comes from the interior toward the bottom. Just gonna pull a little bit more of this orange. I cleaned off my brush. Just into here. I feel like that yellow got a bit much. That's better. And finally, dip my brush into the water. See, I've got a drip there. Just getting that water off. A little bit of orange, you know what's coming. You love it or you hate it. All right, get that paint so that it flows. That flows pretty good. I'm gonna scoop up quite a bit of it. And I'm gonna hold my brush pretty close to the fire. Just give it a few little flicks for some sparkly kind of fire bursts. Sparks. I guess that would be called sparks. Don't go crazy. I think that's probably good. If you feel like there's too many in this area, just a clean brush, a little bit of pains, and we can kind of pretty happy. Just gonna add just like one more little guy right in here. And then I think I'm good. I'm gonna sign it.